So guys, we're just continuing on with the Traxxas 1/16 scale rally, and we've got a few updates to go over, which is now going to become a part of the channel, just explaining the upgrades and the journey so far. So when I first took this out, I immediately encountered some real problems, and it had a lot to do with the steering. It was really stiff and it was quite a puzzle for me to unravel. When I had a look, these two screws that sit right inside the bell crank, these were rubbing off the front block. So what I did was I just dremeled them down, shaved them down. Now I also noticed that the steering was really loose, and this was due to the tie rods and the little plastic holder that the screw goes through. This was actually larger than the hole for the hub, so it was kind of a hard situation to get around. And what I did was it allowed the screw to just loosely move back and forward. So I actually removed the screw and drilled a hole straight through, and it did completely shred the thread, so it had nothing to grip onto anymore. And by doing that, I then put a thicker screw, so it tightened up the tie rod. And once again, one thing that I do use for my RCs is JB Weld, and it's just a 2-part epoxy glue, and they say it bonds as hard as steel. So once the screw was through, I just put some of that over there, and that seemed to solve the steering problem completely. Now these pillow balls that are in here, I also had to tighten these up, and that made a massive difference, and now the steering works absolutely great. Now when it was quite stiff, the standard steering servo, which is by Traxxas, and it only has plastic gears. This isn't actually in the E-Revo 1/16 scale RC that I purchased. It's actually a Savox steering servo, and I can see why it was replaced, because it's pretty much cheap garbage, to be honest. It just burnt out and smoke started coming from it the minute it was put under any sort of pressure. Now to replace this, I purchased a waterproof Power HD, what's called the T5R waterproof steering servo, which is this here, and now everything works just 10 times better. It's extremely durable and responsive. Now what happened, guys, was I did take this RC out with the Porsche shell and the wheels and tires that I did show you in the previous video explaining exactly what I had planned for this. And one of these tie rods came loose on 3S LiPo. Now when it popped out and I was doing a speed run, the car lost control and it spun over and over multiple times, and it did that on many occasions. Now this is because the wheels and tires that I chose to use, I sourced out deliberately because they had really great grip, and that worked against me. Because the width of the wheels and tires and the size of this RC is so small, when it would turn corners at the speed it was travelling at, it would flip over, and it's because of these wheels and tires were so grippy. Now that's a good and a bad thing. It does keep it in straight lines very well, but when as I said, when you were turning on tarmac, you know, the width of the RC is so small that it was flipping over. Now what this did was reveal how cheap and cheap plastic and weak these wheels actually are. They do feel pretty solid, but with the pressure they're rolling, you know, they just broke into many pieces. Now I'm not going to say that necessarily had to happen. If I had picked a tire that had less grip, you know, it wouldn't traction roll as I would like to call it. Now the original wheels and tires that came with this RC I didn't particularly like. They were really slippy and they were kind of hard feeling, and I couldn't get some grip on them. But I'm now starting to understand that they're actually very good, and that is for the very purpose that they do allow some slide, so they don't grip up super well, but at the same time they allow some give so that the RC does, you know, it can power slide around, and it won't roll immediately. Now another thing that I noticed was the quality difference. The wheels are so thick inside the hubs here, so even if it did roll, these aren't just going to crack. Now personally, I was going to say that my experience with this RC taught me that 3S LiPo is just far too fast for this, but that's only due to the fact that these wheels and tires were being used. Now that I'm using these ones, the 3S LiPo is outstanding because you can power slide and you can just rip the RC around and have some real great fun with it, you know, using maximum power. So what I did was, I actually put some Loctite, which you can purchase for yourself, in all these tie rods so that they don't come loose anymore. So these are the upgrades that I've made so far, and we're just going to be continuing on, and we're going to make some more footage with the Rally body shell and now these wheels and tyres in several different locations. The footage that I did make, the 3S LiPo footage, the speed run, the SD card and my camera did actually stop working, and you know, I was going to include that to show you exactly what happened. It was going extremely quick and it slid off, and it did roll and it hit a tree at some super high speeds, and of course these wheels and tyres completely obliterated. But you know, I'm not knocking these or disrespecting these wheels, because you know, you can't really blame something just because your tie rod came off and the car rolled. But at the same time, I do actually prefer these guys. So this is just another little bit of knowledge for yourselves. If you do own or purchase one of these 1/16 scale rallies, they are very hard to get a hold of, but I do recommend these wheels and tyres here, guys, especially for high speed, just, you know, tearing about and, you know, taking corners, etc. on 3S LiPo. So guys, that's the journey so far with this RC. We're just going to move on. I've tightened up all these hubs. Everything's in line, the tyres are in line, everything feels absolutely solid. These are all the sort of small hiccups that you face on the journey to perfection, which is when you finally get your RC built the way you want it to be, and it performs exactly how you want it to do. So there's going to be many more to come, much more footage with this RC, and we'll see where we go from there. Thanks for watching, guys.